Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for joining us again today. Well, we have another pistol video for you here today, and this is not a request. We are still getting a lot of people that are .22 long rifle enthusiasts, and we had a specific request to talk about the Sig Sauer P322. So we're going to get into all the features and details and find out whether this is a carry gun, a good training partner, or maybe a little of both, but we're going to find all that out and more in just a minute. All right, once again, welcome back. Thanks for being with us. If this is your first time coming to the channel, or if you've been watching our videos and just haven't had a chance to do so before now, and you like our content, please consider subscribing. You can locate that subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner of your computer screen there. If you're on a mobile device, you can scroll down below the video and subscribe that way. It's a simple thing that helps out a whole lot, and we really appreciate it. So, Sig Sauer P322. A lot of people don't get real excited about .22s, and I'll admit, I don't carry a .22 as a defensive gun. Now, that doesn't mean that I wouldn't. If I was in a situation where I had limited means to carry ammo and I had to pick something, I have often said that .22 long rifle would be one of the rounds that I chose because of its versatility. But we've still got a lot of people who are pretty interested in the .22 long rifle round for defensive purposes and just in general sport shooting. So as always, we like to start off with a little comparison, and what I'm going to compare it to is going to seem quite a bit different, but it's really in the same category if you get right down to it. I've seen a number of pistols kind of like this, varying capacity styles, whether it's a Smith & Wesson or a Taurus. But to me, the gun to beat so far, when you're talking about .22 long rifle pistols, for me the gun to beat is the FN502, which is this pistol here. Now, the FN502 obviously is made quite a bit different, and it was sort of made specifically to be a training partner to the FN509, which is the 9mm counterpart, even though the FN509 is striker fired and the FN502 is hammer fired. But when you look at this, you may think this is a striker fired pistol, but it's not. The 322 is actually also hammer fired. It's just internal. It's underneath the slide here, so you can't see it. But taking a look at these just for comparison, as far as their overall dimensions, if you take the end of the barrel out of the picture for the 502, it's not that much bigger as far as just the overall slide thickness, length. The grip's a little bit thinner on the 502 than on the Sig. But the really interesting part about these, of course, is going to come down to their capacity, which we'll get into more in the features section. But the FN, comes standard with a 10-round magazine. You can get 15 extended. The Sig 322 has 20-round magazines. And we'll show you how they accomplish that in a minute. But just doing your general overview, talking about size, you can see that these two are very similar in size. Now, if you're not familiar with the FN502 and you're still looking for some scale, let me help you out. I'll grab something that everybody should know about, and that's a Glock 19. And the reason I'm doing this is because I think it's important that people understand what they're really looking at. Sometimes people get an idea about a firearm and think, well, that's small, compact, and I've got 20 rounds, so that's great. It's easy to carry gun. Well, this is going to be fairly light, and even fully loaded, it's going to be lighter than, a lot of your standard compact pistols. But keep in mind, a Glock 19, at least in my opinion, is not a small pistol. I can carry one concealed, but I prefer to carry something much smaller. So, if you've carried a Glock 19, you're familiar at all with what it's like to manage that size firearm, then this gives you an idea that the Sig P322 is not a small gun. I think it's important that you know that going into it, because although some people may choose this as a carry gun, you want to consider that overall size and weight just like you would any other. We're going to jump right into the features here, but before we do, I want to take just a moment to thank our friends over at Don's Weaponry for providing us this beautiful example of the P322 by Sig Sauer for our tabletop review today. Don's Weaponry is a huge supporter of firearm safety and education, and we can't thank them enough. So, we're going to do our normal kind of top-down review of the features here, but before we do, I want to cover something because capacity is always something that comes up early on. I just want to show you this. We're going to cover this part of the feature early on. If you've had your hands on any of these 22s, other people, whether it's Taurus or anything else that has a standard high-capacity magazine, you may notice it's either going to be 10 or 15 rounds. I have a metal Sig 1911 that has little 10-round magazines. This is from the FN502, and it has single stack. It looks wide, but inside it is just essentially that metal single stack right there. And a lot of it has to do with reliability over time, and that seems to be the most popular design, that people feel comfortable being reliable. Well, Sig Sauer has come up with a 20-round magazine, and you may be wondering how they pulled that off. Well, if you're familiar with the Sig Micro Compacts, of course the 365, and of course you have other competing pistols that have all kind of gone to this magazine design where they have offset stacks. It's not a double, it's not a single, it's kind of offset. And that puts you between a double stack capacity and a single stack capacity and lets you get more rounds in a smaller area. Well, that's exactly what they have done with the 322. Okay, and you can actually see the offset inside the magazine there. So we'll have to see how that plays out over time as far as reliability, but that is what they have done. So, looking at our other features here, of course, we have a fiber optic sight. The dots are kind of small, but they show up really well. Bright green. If you have really good light, or especially sunlight, they shine really well, so it's very easy to see. Once again, this is a hammer fired. This is not striker fired. Underneath the slide here, the hammer is concealed. But so it is a hammer fired 22 long rifle semi-auto pistol. You have a plate here that's removable on the rear for optics. It will take any RMSC footprint such as the Sig Romeo 0 or something like it. And of course you can get adapter plates to put whatever you want to on there as far as others. You got some pretty good serrations here on the front and rear. Nice accessory rail. If you like to put a light laser or combo thereof on your handgun, you can certainly do that if you choose to use this as either a carry gun or home defense or even just for general use. Large trigger guard, which I really like. I like having being able to index my trigger guard and then being able to drop right down in there without having to hunt around for where my finger goes. So I like that quite a bit. We'll talk more about the trigger and the range section, but you do have a flat trigger shoe that comes on it, and they also give you a curved trigger shoe here if you want to put that on, so you can change that up a little bit if you like. You do have a manual safety, and it does have a good tactile lock to it. It's very, very positive feel, and it is ambidextrous. In addition to that, you have your slide, lock, and release here, the next one up, and it is also ambidextrous. As far as your takedown lever, you lock the slide back and then you rotate the lever straight up like that. And then what you actually do is you pull backwards here and then you rotate the slide up, and it just comes completely off like that. And you can access the barrel and all that, and you can see the hammer in there if you want to. But once that's done, it's very similar to any other handgun as far as its internal parts. So we're not going to waste too much time on that. The magazine release. This is the one gripe I have with this design so far, and I'll show you why. So, looking at this, when I have a single hand grip on the firearm, it's pretty good. I feel like my thumb's got a good place for it to go. I can index trigger guard, good. When I have a two-handed grip on this, my other thumb, no matter how I do this, my other thumb is kind of sitting on the magazine release, and I have hit it without meaning to more than once. Now I'm working on a way to position my thumb a little bit better. But to me, it's a little too high. It's in a kind of a bad place. But that's just me. You get pretty good grip texture here. A lot of smaller SIG pistols have got this type of pattern. It's not too coarse and it's not too light. I think it's a really good feel. And of course, you do have the flush fitting magazine. So as far as a .22 long rifle goes, I think it has a good set of features. It has a very similar look and style to many other SIG handguns, although it is not an exact size match for, any existing model, so it's not like you can reuse any of your old holsters, that type of thing. But it definitely looks and has the same feel of some of the other SIG pistols that it was based on. Another feature that might interest some of you, those who like to do any suppressed shooting, if you've got some .22 suppressors laying around, you like to do a little, either just some target shooting and not have to worry about having to have the heaviest ear protection in the world, or you just like shooting suppressed in general, it does come with a threaded barrel adapter. So if you want to add that to the firearm and then use your favorite suppressor with the firearm, you can do that very easily. A lot of people have taken to shooting .22s suppressed as a method of practice. It's pretty good training, shooting with a suppressor. Obviously, your gun's going to shoot a little bit different with it on there. But it does have that feature if it interests you. So, interesting story about the range with this pistol. There's a group that I shoot with quite a bit. Some are close friends, some are just shooters that are sort of in our little group of gun enthusiasts. And I had someone ask me, asked me what's coming up in the video list, that type of thing. And I mentioned the .322 was coming up, and he goes, well, I just got one, so why don't you come out to my place and let's shoot mine, because he had heard some things about the firearm. He wanted to see whether they're really true or not. He'd heard actually some bad things. And I said, okay, well, let's go. So his gun was purchased, I think, within the last 30 days. So as far as date of manufacture, serial number, similarity, these two guns are identical. So when I talk about the other one, it's the same thing. But we shot that particular firearm, and one of the things that he said that he had been told is that there were some problems with the gun, with accuracy, if it got dirty. And I said, okay, well, let's put that to the test. Well, I always try to vary the ammunition a little bit. I like the Remington Golden Bullet. This has been a really good overall reliable round in a lot of .22s. Of course, the CCI, the little mini mag. I've shot thousands and thousands of these, and I really don't think I've ever had a .22 that didn't like the CCI. Some of the Federal Target. I had trouble with some heavier .22 cycling this ammo, but I actually didn't have any trouble with the Sig .322. So anyway, shooting these various types of ammo, we shot and we shot and we shot and we shot and we shot. And there were a couple of times when the gun failed to fire and, just racked it clear and fired again. But it wasn't very often. I think out of, 2 or 3 bricks of ammo, maybe 1 round per brick. But I didn't experience the problems that were being described. They said, yeah, if the gun gets dirty, it just doesn't shoot accurately anymore. Well, I think what the actual deal is I think they were referring to the non-jacketed ammo, because we shot some regular just lead nose non-jacketed ammo, and when the gun started getting really filthy, there was a little bit of an issue with buildup in the barrel, and it was not shooting quite as accurate as it was before we switched over to the more dirty ammo. So that is something good to know. I don't ever use non-jacketed ammo in my firearms anyway. We had some, so we used it just to verify that was an issue. But if you use any common, ammo, the CCIs, got the copper plating on it. You know, the golden bullets are jacketed. I think that most of your good quality 22 ammo will be just fine. So accuracy wise, once again, I told you we were going to talk about the trigger, because that was one of the other things that was mentioned. Was they some other people have said some harsh things about the trigger and how it affects the accuracy. Well, for me, my experience with the trigger was pretty simple. It has an area when you first start pulling on it that's definitely a little spongy. And then once you get to the back of that, once you get through that, it almost immediately breaks. So it's kind of a weird trigger, but I don't want to say it's a bad trigger. And once you get used to where that reset is, you can actually get some pretty accurate repeating performance out of this. We tried with both trigger shoes. I kind of prefer the flat one myself, especially for what we're talking about, you know, with that repeated performance. I feel like the flat trigger was a little bit easier to get better accurate shots with. But with the ammo that we were just talking about, you know, I fully expect a 22 to be accurate, and you know, at 21 feet, it was making just as good a groups as I would expect with anything else, you know, under an inch with pretty much any ammo I put in it. I think that some of the people who have been harsh about the trigger, maybe they're just considering that relative to maybe some other firearms that have better triggers. I've never had a single 22, with the exception of one, my 1911 22, that I thought even had a good trigger. That gun, that Sig 1911, has a really good trigger as far as I'm concerned. But all these other similar polymer 22s that I've shot, the triggers, you know, they're okay. But I don't think this trigger is that much different than any of the others that I've tried, and I really don't think it's a bad trigger. I think it just takes a little getting used to. And I think once you do get used to that trigger, I think you'll find that it's just as good as anything else. So what's it like to carry the Sig P322? Well, as I mentioned in the beginning when we did our size comparison, kind of talking about the size of this gun, this is not a small gun. You know, once again, remember, this thing is, you know, it's the size of a Glock 19. It's a pretty good sized pistol. It's lighter, you know, when loaded, and lighter when it's unloaded, because it doesn't have near as much metal in it as the Glock does, and the rounds weigh a lot less when it's fully loaded. But it's still big, it's still bulk. So the best way I can describe it is you feel the same bulk, but it feels a little bit easier to manage. Now, even though it looks, obviously, you know, as I said before, this is kind of a unique size and dimension for Sig. It looks, you can tell it's been influenced by other Sig pistols, but it's not the same size as any other Sig pistol that I have. And therefore, it doesn't fit any of the other Sig holsters that I have. But sticky to the rescue, because I've always got a sticky that'll fit anything. And so, for the purposes of my test, we went with the sticky. Because I found that both in my sticky and I've got a couple of generic leather holsters that also were kind of Glock 19 style, and it fit it just fine. So, because the difference in weight, now normally when I talk about stickies, if you've watched any of my videos before, you've heard me mention I typically only use stickies for either pocket guns or guns that are so light that when they're in the waistband, I feel like that a sticky can hold that weapon securely with no problems, because many people will not carry a holster that doesn't have some sort of hard retention, and I get that. And if that's you, do that. You know, you need to do what you're comfortable with. I'm pretty comfortable with a sticky as long as the weight of the gun is where I need it to be, because I'm always very aware of where my firearm is, and I don't feel uncomfortable with that, you know, waistband style, you know, retention just around the belt line. I feel like that's enough as long as I'm paying attention to what I'm doing. But having said that, so the bulk felt very similar to having a Glock 19 in the waistband, which I had done many times before, but it's not near as heavy. So it carries and the waistband in a very similar fashion to a smaller firearm. Like if I was carrying a Glock 27, a much shorter compact firearm, well, that gun weighs the same as this does whenever it's fully loaded. So the bulk with lower weight actually made it very easy to manage, with a sticky. Now, I think ultimately this would be a lot more comfortable, if you had something that was a little more, custom, something that had a good, maybe a Kydex and leather combination, something like that if you're going to carry it all the time. But I was able to carry it pretty comfortably in a sticky, and, it wasn't any problem at all. The gun doesn't weigh that much, and, if you compare it to even a regular compact or even a subcompact gun, the weight is so good on this that I don't think you're really going to notice that it's a larger frame gun. So overall impressions of the Sig Sauer P322. There's several categories that you have to look at when you're assessing a firearm. But remember, we're assessing this firearm as a carry gun. Now, I think that as far as a training tool, it's a nice little gun. I think it shoots pretty well. Obviously, caution against using non-jacketed ammo because once it gets really dirty, that affects its performance. The few failure to fires, I believe they're just light primer strikes, which is not uncommon in a 22 pistol. Anyone who's used to carrying a gun like this and they know how rimfire ammo is, I'm just not shocked if I have an occasional round that doesn't fire when it's 22 long rifle. So there's not anything wrong with this firearm that I think is related to quality or to design. Nothing like that. I think that its shortcomings are more or less tied to the round that it fires. There are some things inherent to 22 long rifle rimfire ammo that I think you just can't get around. As far as design, as I said, the only thing I really don't like is the magazine release. I think it sticks out way too far, and I think it's in a terrible place. But that's something I can work through, to make sure it's not a big of an issue whenever I'm using it. But my natural position, I end up with my thumb right on it, and that really bothers me. But overall, like I said, it's a nice shooting, nice looking. You can tell it's inspired by many of the other things that Sig has been doing. And if you want something to have fun with, if you want to plink or just practice your shooting, I think this is a good choice for that. But personally, I doubt that I'm not liable to use a 22 for defense unless it's a unique situation. That's just I figure for the size, if I can carry a gun this large with 20 rounds, plus one, so a 21 capacity total. Well, if I'm carrying a Hellcat or a 365 or something like that, I can be carrying 9mm, and yeah, it's a little over half the capacity by comparison, but it's a much more capable round, and it's a smaller package. So to me, that makes more sense than carrying something like this as a carry gun. But that doesn't mean you can't. It's just something you have to think about because, once again, 22 has some inherent issues that come with it as far as reliability. But it's a good design. I think that if they continue with this, and work with this, maybe they can get this a little bit better as far as the overall look and feel. But I don't think it's a bad offering if you want to look at it that way. So if you like 22 and you're comfortable with it and the shortcomings that 22 has, then there's no reason why you couldn't consider that putting it in your collection. I still think that the 502 is the gun to beat. If you're gonna do this, I just feel like the FN is just a little bit better designed. And there are some other ones. The Smith & Wesson version, they have a compact 22. I think is a very good option too. Like I say, this is a good first showing, but I think there are a lot of, better options that you could go with if you were really seriously wanting that to be your carry gun in 22. Not bad, but like I say, it could use a little refining. But anyway, that is going to do it for today. As always, we really appreciate you being with us. We'll be back very soon with another video for you. So until that time, everyone, stay safe and have a great day. Thank you.